Hey everyone, my name's Greg. I'm a principal here at Collectiv, and today I'll be talking to you about Power BI licensing. Power BI licensing is a very difficult and confusing thing as far as the Power BI ecosystem is concerned. I know from using the tool for the past 6 years, it was one of the most difficult things for me to comprehend and really wrap my head around what was the right Power BI license for myself, as well as what was the right Power BI license for our clients. So hopefully by the end of this presentation today, you're going to have a better understanding of Power BI licensing and how your organization can utilize it. All right, so let's dive right in here. So today we're going to be talking about all the different forms of Power BI licensing. We're going to start off with Power BI Free, Power BI Pro. We're then going to dive into Power BI Premium, and that's going to focus on the P SKUs, the per user, and the EM SKUs. Right after that, we're going to talk about Power BI Report Server, and then we're going to end our presentation today on Power BI Embedded. That's what we call the A SKUs. So to start off with, I'm going to speak about Power BI Free. Power BI Free, there's a few things we need to understand about it. It is meant for you and you alone. So the reason it is free is Microsoft says, hey, this is a free version. You can use it. However, it's really only meant for yourself. So the way I kind of, tell our clients how it should be used for is, let's say you have, personal finances, or you have some personal KPIs you want to keep track of. Use Power BI Free for that, because you can't share these reports when you have the free version. Okay, so when you have free, you can't share that report with somebody else, because at the end of the day, it's meant for you and you alone. You can only do one refresh per day, which means that if I'm connecting to a specific data set, whether that's an Excel sheet, whether that's a SQL database or some third-party API, I can only refresh my data set one time per day. There's no direct query option, which means I can't directly query a data source. However, there is one final point here I would like to make, is that the Power BI free version is used within the Power BI premium SKUs. That is a viewer option, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later when we actually start talking about Power BI premium. But hopefully this gives you a more understanding of what Power BI free is and what it's meant for. So now let's dive into Power BI Pro. This is the most common Power BI SKU. It's required for all forms of report publishing. So if I am creating a report in Power BI Desktop and then I want to publish that up to the Power BI service and then share that across my organization, I need to have Power BI Pro in order to do that. We are assuming that you do not have premium. So for this slide that we're looking at right here, this is assuming that there's no Power BI premium involved. So if I have Power BI Pro in my organization, in order for me to share my report with another individual in my organization, they will also need to have a Pro license. And that Pro license costs $10 per month per user. So if I have 10 users and we all need to be viewing and collaborating on reports, that's going to essentially cost you $10 times 10 users, so $100 per month. One other thing I'd like to mention about the licensing aspect of it is that it is included with Office 365 E5 licensing. So if you have E5, you already have Power BI Pro. A few other common points with Power BI is that you can have a maximum of 8 scheduled refreshes per day. So unlike Power BI Free, I can refresh this on any half-hour segment of the day. So if I want to refresh it at 8 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., I can do that throughout the day at half-hour intervals, but I can only do that 8 times per day. And the other thing I can do is I can actually have a maximum data set size of 1 gigabyte. So essentially what that means is whenever I'm creating a Power BI report, I'm creating a data set first. I'm creating that data model. That data set size can only be up to 1 gigabyte. Once you get above that, you need to start looking at either creating multiple data sets or upgrading to a premium SKU in order to accommodate that much larger data set size. The maximum storage per user is 10 gigabytes per user. So again, if that storage needs to go much higher for your end users, then you need to start looking at a premium SKU. We're going to now start talking about the different SKUs associated with Power BI Premium. Right now we're going to talk about the P SKUs. You're going to see there's a P1 through P5, and they vary in cost. Obviously the P1 is much less, and then as you get higher and you have more needs throughout your organization, you're then go from a P1 potentially all the way up to a P5. This premium capacity is really meant for a dedicated capacity type of approach. So if you need much more processing power, if you need much more stored with Power BI, you're going to look at more of a Power BI premium SKU versus a Power BI Pro SKU. One of the easiest ways to determine if you should be on Pro or Premium is if you have at least 500 users who are going to be utilizing Power BI throughout the organization. So if you have at least 500, you're probably looking at using some type of premium P SKU. The other reason why you might actually want to use Power BI Premium is if you're wanting to use some of the additional features that are offered that we'll kind of go into here on the next slide that Power BI Pro does not offer. So if you're looking at some of those additional features that Power BI Pro does not bring to the table, Premium may be a best bet for you. So let's look at some of those features. So the Power BI Premium P SKUs are going to give you dedicated capacity like we spoke about before. The storage, this is going to give you up to 100 terabytes. The model size limit, like we spoke about before, that data set, that can go up to 400 gigabytes. Data refresh, so versus 8 times per day with Power BI Pro, you can actually refresh up to 48 times per day. So that's a really value-added feature there, to where if I have a report that I'm needing to see changes more frequently than just 8 times per day, or if I have individuals, working all hours of the day and they need to see these reports, that 48 times per day is a much more value-added component of the premium SKUs. The other thing that you're going to get is you're going to get some AI and ML and cognitive services features that are not available with your Pro SKUs. The other thing that Power BI just came out with this past year is something called data marts. So if you're wanting to create data marts and utilize that within your Power BI environment, you will need a premium SKU for that as well. Collectiv has had other videos on data marts, so if you do have interest in that, please take a look at our other videos where we are talking about data marts in that fashion. Data flows, they are things that are offered with the Pro SKU. However, there are some features with the data flows that are not offered in Pro that Premium does allow. So one of those is direct query. So I can directly query a data flow with a Premium SKU, but however, with the Pro SKU, I cannot do that. The other thing that the Premium SKU offers is deployment pipelines. Another offering is automatic page refresh. And finally, you do get access to XMLA endpoints when you have a premium SKU. So there are a lot of different features that are not on this screen that Premium does offer over Pro. But long story short, what I would do is I would assess where you're at as an organization as far as your Power BI or Power BI journey, what you're wanting to do, and then you can hopefully make a decision between, is Pro the right fit for me or is Premium the right fit? And the other thing you might be asking yourself, well, I'm watching this video. How do I know if I'm on a premium SKU or I'm on a Pro SKU? Well, one quick way to notice is if you see on the screenshot here, I have a circle around a little diamond. So if you're in a workspace inside of your Power BI tenant and you see a diamond right next to that workspace name, that basically is an indication that it is a premium workspace, and therefore you have a premium SKU associated with those reports that are inside of that data set. Power BI has just come out with Power BI Premium Gen 2. So if you have Power BI Premium, it's most likely that you have now been upgraded to the new version of that called Power BI Premium Gen 2. And the one thing I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about today was one of the features that is included with it for a purchase price is something called Autoscale. So Autoscale is essentially a way for you to auto-scale your different SKUs within your Power BI Premium tenant when your end users are seeing performance issues. For example, if I am using a P1 SKU and all of my users are accessing a certain report at the same time during the day, what's probably going to happen is you're going to see some latency or performance issues on those reports. So before Autoscale was in place, you pretty well just had to deal with it, or you had to make the decision to purchase the next SKU, whether or not you were going to be using that full capacity or not. What Autoscale allows you to do is to basically set parameters that basically allows you to scale your resources up from, essentially like a P1 SKU to a P2 SKU whenever performance issues are occurring inside of your tenant. So in that scenario where I have all 500 or all 1,000 users hitting a specific report at the same time, everybody's looking at it at 8 a.m. in the morning, Power BI is going to recognize that, hey, I'm seeing a ton of usage and I'm seeing my performance spike. What Autoscale is going to do is going to automatically recognize that and scale you up to the next tier so that performance is no longer an issue and your end users stay happy and they can actually use that report. And then when that performance or when those end users are starting to not use that report and everybody's no longer inside of Power BI, it's also going to recognize that and scale it back down. So it's not just going to scale it up to the next level and leave it there. It's also going to recognize when there's not much usage in that premium tenant and scale it back down to the lowest tenant possible at where you made your settings at. So I do want to hammer on a few other key points about Power BI Premium, and this has to do a little bit about the Power BI Free section that we talked about at the very beginning of this presentation. So with Power BI Premium, you still need to have Power BI Pro. While Power BI Premium allows you to have free users to where if I'm just looking at a report, I don't need to buy a Power BI Pro license because I'm just viewing. If someone else in my organization is just viewing the reports, they just need the free version and can view that report. However, if someone else in my organization is actually doing the development of those reports, they need to actually have a pro license in order to publish these reports up to the workspace and then distribute those throughout the organization. So let's use this specific scenario here on the screen. If a company may decide to purchase Premium, there's still a need for Pro in order to build, publish, and manage reports. So for example, if I purchase Premium and have 500 Power BI users who only view the report, but also 100 users who will use the report for self-service BI, meaning that they're actually going to connect to my data sets and start building out their own personal reports and then publishing them up to a Power BI service, they're going to need a 100 Pro license. This is just a visual here to kind of help understand how the collaborating works within Power BI. So you can see here on the top, Workspace A is shared capacity. I have one user with a Pro license who's basically designing and publishing. So I'm publishing that up to my top workspace, Workspace A. Users with Pro licenses can access that, okay? Now, if I'm publishing it to the premium dedicated capacity on the bottom in Workspace B, my users with Pro licenses can also access that, but also users with a free license can access that as well. So if I have a free license, I can access reports that are published in a premium capacity. I cannot, if I have a free license, I cannot access reports that are published in a shared capacity that does not have premium associated with it. So hopefully this diagram gives you guys a little bit better understanding of how Pro licenses work, gives you an understanding that I need a Pro license no matter what to publish to a workspace, and at the end of the day, who can access which workspace. Okay, let's talk about the EM SKU. EM essentially represents embedded. So EM SKUs have 3 different SKUs. It's EM1 through EM3, and they're available only through volume licensing plans, meaning you can't directly purchase them through Office 365. You'll actually have to go through a Microsoft provider to get these EM SKUs. But essentially, the whole point for an EM SKU is that you can take a report and you can embed that inside of Microsoft Teams or within Microsoft SharePoint, okay? There's a few nuances to that. So your end users, the viewers of these reports, they don't have access to the Power BI service. So the Power BI service does give you a few more options that are basically not going to be available to your end users like they would be if they were in Teams or SharePoint. So essentially, if I use an EM SKU, it's more so to keep my reports with inside of Teams and SharePoint rather than having them go into Power BI service and access them in that way. Keep in mind, this still requires a pro license. So even though that my end users are accessing these reports inside of Teams or SharePoint, you're still going to need an individual or set of individuals who are going to have pro and are going to publish these reports up to the Power BI service that can then be used to be embedded inside of Teams and SharePoint. The last SKU we're going to be speaking about is called Power BI Premium per user. This SKU is $20 per month per user, so a little bit higher than the pro licenses. You need a premium per user license to access content and premium per user workspaces, meaning if I just have a pro license and there is a premium per user workspace, I cannot access it because I'm not at the same level or at the same tier as someone else. It includes all pro license capabilities along with certain premium features. So if you see here on the screenshot below, there are some different features that are included and a few that are not. And also what's also important is really just understanding who can see what. This is always the big question we get is I have Power BI Premium per user, or I have Power BI Pro, I have Premium per capacity. What does this all mean? So this table gives you the perfect example of what is available on a license basis of who can see what and who has access to what. Let's take another look at Power BI Premium Report Server. Report Server is a premium feature because if you have Power BI Premium dedicated capacity as one of the P SKUs, you actually get Report Server with it. However, you can purchase Power BI Report Server separately. If let's say your organization does not want to move to the cloud, or there's some reasons why your data cannot leave on premise, you're going to want to look at using something called Power BI Report Server, which is on this slide here. So like I had mentioned, it's already included with Power BI Premium. It is not included with Power BI Premium per user though, so just keep that in mind. It is included with Power BI Premium P SKUs. This can be purchased separately with SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance. Let's say that your organization is not moving to the cloud, you're not going to use any form of Power BI service. You're going to want to purchase Power BI Report Server, and you do that by purchasing SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance. That cost is approximately $40K. That can go up or down depending upon who you are purchasing that SKU from, and that expires after 2 years. You still do need a pro license though. So again, there's no way to get around a pro license if you're going to be publishing anything to either Report Server or to the service. So in this scenario, you still need a pro license to publish to your Power BI Report Server. Viewers of the reports, they don't require a license. So again, if I'm just analyzing and viewing my reports, I do not need a license. One key thing I do want to point out here though is that it does require a special type of Power BI desktop to develop reports. So you don't download the Power BI desktop from the Microsoft Store for Power BI Report Server. There's a special download for that on the Power BI website. Let's wrap things up here with the final SKU that we'll be speaking about here today, and that is Power BI Embedded. And Power BI Embedded is represented by what we call the A SKUs. This is purchased through the Microsoft Azure service. And really the whole purpose of A SKUs or Power BI Embedded is essentially to allow ISVs to embed Power BI into their applications. So we see this a lot of times with organizations that maybe have their own dedicated application, whether it's a CRM or it's some other app, and they want to build their own analytics. So instead of actually going off and building an analytical tool, they'll essentially white label Power BI by using Power BI Embedded and represent their own metrics inside of their app using the Power BI Embedded A SKU. One thing to keep in mind, this usually does involve Azure analysis services. It can still use Power BI Premium, but in most instances it will use Azure analysis services. There are a lot more details there that we will not be covering today in the licensing. And this here is just a really good slide that really just breaks down the different types of Power BI Premium SKU pricing. It goes all the way from your EM SKUs, your P SKUs, and then your A SKUs. So we have looked all over the net trying to find this type of information. So we just thought it'd be helpful for anybody watching this video to really take take this table and use it to really help yourself understand what is that cost associated with each one of these SKUs. The final thing I do want to speak about associated with Power BI licensing is, what about guest users? What if I have end users that are outside of my Office 365 tenant and they want to access my reports? What type of licensing do I need there? I'm not going to go into too many details here because there are a lot of different pathways you can take when it comes to guest users. But essentially know this: either you're going to have to provide some type of licensing for them, either by giving them a pro license or they have a pro license, or you're going to have to invite them to your tenant in order to give them access to your premium environment as a viewer, or you'll want to embed the Power BI report into your own application, then give somebody access in that way. There's a lot of different ways we can do this, but just keep in mind, there's no way from them getting around having some type of license. Either they're paying for it or you are paying for it as a service to these guest users. That being said, that is the end of today's presentation. Hopefully you found this very valuable. Again, if you have any questions about Power BI licensing, Power BI in general, Collectiv is here to help. Please reach out to us and we'll do our best to point you in the right direction.